Today, I want to teach not only kind of like how I learned, but from how I learned Linux, I want you guys to be able to apply that. And this tutorial goes out for anyone that's going from beginner to advanced. You know, maybe if you've already been into Linux for a while, you can still get some information out of it. But let's get into it. So I'd say there's two methods to learning Linux. I would say there's a more traditional course-based approach, and then I would say there's maybe more my approach. And I wouldn't say that my approach is completely unique. I'd say probably there's been a lot of people have had the exact same approach as me. I wouldn't recommend a more course-based approach. I wouldn't recommend taking some online course. There's plenty of them out there. And maybe they aren't even that bad. Like, you definitely would probably learn. But which is more efficient and which is more beneficial for you to become a long time, and not even a long time user of Linux, but also like a good user of Linux. And I mean like good, like you're proficient, like you're good at it. Like personally, I never read any book relating to Linux. I've never read any book. You know, I've read some documentation. I've watched a lot of YouTube videos, but I've never read any books. I've never taken a course or anything. And I'd say that I'm a decent level. Like, I wouldn't say like I'm the best of the best. Like, you know, there's still so much stuff that I don't know about, so much stuff that I'm not doing like well or efficiently or whatever. But like, I can use it. And like, I could use it to, I guess, like it suits my needs. That's essentially like Linux at the end of the day is an operating system. So I would say I'm pretty good. But yeah, I would not recommend learning for a course. What I would recommend is using your own curiosity to fuel you. That's what I did. You know, without intentionally, like I never thought about this. But when I first learned about Linux, like I was literally just watching YouTube videos and this guy was using Linux. And I was like, you know, his desktop looked weird, like it was a lot different. But also like to me, it looked cool. Like it looked weird, but cool. And I just wanted to kind of like, I guess you would say like learn more. And that's how I learned. Like originally his video wasn't even about Linux, but I started watching more videos about the guy. The guy is mental outlaw, just so you know. And yeah, I just started watching more videos. And I think I also mentioned this during a live stream. I think my last live stream or something like that. But for me, it's all about trial and error. Essentially, I remember he made a video talking about, I think he also talked about like how to get into Linux or like how, you know, how to start getting into it. And what he recommended was Linux Mint. And what I did is I simply installed a virtual machine. If you don't know that, it's like running an operating system on your operating system. So, you know, I have my computer here, and it's like if I had like this new window, and then this window had Windows on it, or had Mac OS, or Linux Mint in this case. That is essentially what a virtual machine is. And, you know, obviously it runs a lot slower, but it gives you the feel of what the operating system's kind of like. And yeah, that's what I did. And I was just curious. Like I downloaded it. I looked up how to like download the ISO. And then from there, I figured out how to flash it onto the virtual machine. And then I remember even like the very first time I was downloading it, I had some weird issue. Like it just would never load. Like it would just constantly load. But it's like little stuff like that. That's what it kind of prepared me to like, okay, this is what it's going to be like. But essentially, yeah, it was curiosity. And now, personally, I would recommend if you're curious about what different like distros are, if like you just want to get a taste. Like you know about Linux, but you don't know how to start, and you just want to get a taste, I'd recommend this website, distros.com. And essentially, it just has all these different distributions you can try out. Like, let's say, oh, I don't know, Manjaro has a cool logo. Let's click on it. Let's, I don't know, let's try the cinnamon version. And then it'll put you into a queue. And yeah, this might be a bit, but essentially, yeah, it'll put you into a queue and it'll let you kind of play around with the distro. So, you know, that I didn't even know about this until like much later after I've actually started. Oh, okay, there, we got a session going. But I didn't even know about this approach until much later. You know, I'll just give that a second to load. But that's what I'd recommend right now. So if you're new, try this out. Or even if you're not new and you're just curious to see what other distros there are, you can just play around with distros like real quick like this. But yeah, essentially that's what I did. I went on Linux Mint, and then I kind of got bored. For me, like, it wasn't stimulating enough, because Linux Mint, if you don't know, it kind of looks like Windows. It's kind of like a worse version of Windows. Like, it's very, like, kind of old. It kind of looks like something from like 2008, 2009. Let's see if this gets working. But yeah, okay. As you can see, like, we've got and I'm running essentially an entire operating system through my browser. Now, obviously, it's very slow. Like, if I click it, it's going to take a while for anything to happen. Like, I click, and then, yeah, it's like very laggy. But at least you can get the feel like, oh, okay, this is what the distribution looks like. This is what I can expect if I select this version. But yeah, so that's what I would recommend. But yeah, I got very bored. I needed more stimulation. I was the guy, I always wanted, like, kind of crave like the challenge and wanted to do the cool thing. And especially back then, I already knew about Arch Linux. I knew that is what all the cool kids were using. That's what was considered hard, difficult. And if you did that, you're a very, like, professional Linux user. So very quickly, I moved on to Arch Linux on the like, I downloaded Arch Linux from a virtual machine, downloaded KDE, and that's what I did. And I started learning, and obviously, you know, made a lot of mistakes, and oh, okay, I have to restart the installation because I typed in a command wrong or something like that. And that's how I went. So I'd recommend the same thing. Just try out whatever distribution, like, just check out some distributions that I just showed before, you know, just try out some, and then whatever you think looks cool and you want to actually play around with it more than just, you know, very laggy browser preview, look up how, or like what, you know, I'd recommend VirtualBox. VirtualBox is a, you know, virtual machine software, and, you know, look up how to install a virtual machine or like Linux distribution, whatever you're trying, let's say Manjaro, onto VirtualBox, and then go from there. Just play around with it, see what you can do. And the next step from here, I'd recommend, is just consuming content. And usually I'm very against consuming content, but recently it occurred to me, I feel like there's kind of like a period, like, you just need to learn. You don't even know what you can do with Linux. Like, I don't know how new you are into it, but assuming you're just completely new, you heard about it, but you don't know much. You don't even know what a tiling window manager is, or desktop environment, or this or that. Then just consume content, you know, watch my videos. It helps me out. But also watch people like Bugswriter and Luke Smith's, like Luke Smith, especially his older videos, just to see what is possible with Netflix, possible with Linux. What am I saying? But like, for example, like, the reason why I was thinking about Netflix is because Bugswriter, I remember he came up with this script, essentially. It's called Notflix. And I've got the program right here. If I type in Notflix, it will come up with, this is like my edit, but it'll say like, what do you want? Movies, TVs, documentaries, anime. And I'll press 1 and then enter it for movies. And then what kind of movie do I want to find? Let's say Avengers. And I typed it in, and then boom, it comes up with a list of all the seeds, essentially torrents of Avengers. Now, I'm not going to look at it because clearly this is illegal and I do not support torrenting. But just so YouTube knows, I don't support torrenting. But it just showed me like, okay, there's like a lot of cool things you can do. And I didn't even think about the fact, like, that's just something, like, you can do it on Windows, but it's just not really built for that kind of thing. You know, just some of the programs that I was using there, you know, like dmenu, you can't download it or can't get it like, I don't think you can get it working on Windows. So yeah, and again, Luke Smith also made some very interesting videos back in the day about like Vim, the things you can do with Vim. As you can see, like, a lot of my content is actually inspired by him, because he always made very informative, knowledge-based videos. And it really just shows you, like, the more you consume of this kind of content and you just kind of see the possibilities, the more you're going to be, like, just going to develop an understanding. And then eventually you're just going to start implementing it without even really trying. You're just going to be like, okay, well, I'm just going to start using more terminal-based programs because of X, Y, Z. I realize why it's better, or this or that. So that'd be my recommendation. Now from there, you might have installed Linux on your bare machine, or maybe if you're a live USB, you're just trying it out, and you know, you get like Linux now. You're starting to get it, but you still want to step up. Maybe you're using like Linux Mint. From there, I'd say just challenge yourself. Start challenging yourself. You know, start using Arch if you want to. Now, obviously, if you don't want to, then don't. But if your goal is to just know as much about Linux and like be good at it as possible, then I'd recommend, you know, going to something like Arch. Arch is gonna push you to learn more. Or Gentoo, even though I don't personally like Gentoo, I think Gentoo is kind of like a stupid operating system. If you do go with it, you'll learn a lot. Like, I don't know really anything about compiling because I've never really had to, like, I've compiled programs before, but I don't really know about it like that. But I'm sure someone who's used Gentoo a lot would understand compiling programs like way better than me, because that's all you do on Gentoo. So that'd be my personal recommendation. And start using, bro, someone's calling me. Further, I would recommend, you know, if you really want to challenge yourself, start using something like Suck software. Start using terminal programs. Suck software is pretty hard. It's pretty hard to use. Even I kind of hate it. Like, I use Suck software, like this terminal. My whole setup is basically Suck software. DWM-ST. You can see a window manager, DWM-ST, dmenu. All these programs I use because, you know, I like how it looks. I like, you know, what you can achieve with it. But I'm going to be honest, it is a pain. But there is some kind of educational value to it, where, you know, the programs are based in C. To update the program, you have to use, like, you have to compile the entire program. Now, it's not complicated. It's not like an insane process once you learn it. You run a command and then boom, you just update it. But it is, you know, it does get you having to learn just a lot of stuff, like extra skills. How to patch, like, you just learn different, like, programs on Unix, or on Linux, should I say. And, you know, using the terminal, one thing that I learned is when I was on Windows, like, I always knew about the terminal as a kid, you know, but as a kid, I thought it was like this crazy, like, esoteric, like, hacking program. Like, I thought it was like, I don't even know, like, I thought it was literally like what hackers do. But then once I started using Linux and, you know, you learn about the terminal, and, bro, I don't know, I sounded like very American there. But, like, you learn about the terminal, and, you know, you just learn, like, you realize that essentially the terminal is just another way to use a computer. Like, how you can think of it is, you'll have, like, a GUI program. You'll have, like, a file manager, okay? Now, that file manager is actually just like, you know, there's a program that essentially just uses the terminal, but visualizes it. You know, when you copy, when you copy a file and then you move it to another folder, all that is the command copy file, and then you're inserting it, like, then you're putting, like, where you want to, like, do it. Like, all that copying a folder is saying, like, let's say I want to copy file to folder 1. That's essentially what copying a file to folder through a GUI program is. It's all essentially just an interface for the terminal. And the terminal is essentially the way you talk to the OS. Like, you have the operating system, and the terminal is just a communication device for that. And one thing that is a consequence of a GUI program is that you can't have all the features. Like, the terminal, what you have to understand, is extremely powerful. The terminal is extremely powerful. There's so much stuff you can do with it. You can't even imagine. There's so much, like, little esoteric, like, programs and little things that you can do with it that you just wouldn't even know. Like, it's just impossible to map it to a GUI program, because the GUI program, like, because it's trying to have buttons for everything, it can't map it. It just simply can't. So because of that, when you remove that interface and you just use the direct source, you know, you can do some, like, stuff. Like, for example, you can copy, like, a file to, like, let's say folder 1. But let's say you wanted to copy every single file that is .mp4. You know, you just wanted to copy every MP4 into some folder. Well, then what you could do is you could do star.mp4 and then folder. And then all that does is it literally, like, it says every single file that is, let me zoom in just so that it makes it more clear. It's saying every single file that has a .mp4 extension, move it to that folder. And you just can't do, like, maybe you can do it in GUI programs. I've never seen it, you know? So it's little functionalities like that, especially if you're working with, like, a whole bunch of files, it can save you a lot of time. Or let's say you wanted to, like, again, like, let's say you just had a file that had the naming scheme like video1, and then, but then it'll have some random text Ava. You know, you can just use this wild star, I think that's what they call it. And then you could put it to the folder or whatever. So there's a lot of functionality that you simply can't achieve with GUI. And using the terminal, once you realize that Linux is essentially just a terminal. Like everything, like the whole operating system, if you go to the TTY, which is like essentially like, that's essentially what Linux is. It's a TTY. Everything after that is just the terminal built like with an interface. So once you start really learning the terminal, you're going to start unlocking a lot more understanding, and you're just going to understand a lot more stuff. And really, to fix a lot of problems, it comes down to like, when you start using Linux, you'll encounter problems you just never encountered on Windows. When you're trying to fix these problems for yourself, usually they'll tell you, okay, so open up the terminal and, open up a Vim or Nano or something like that. So you're just going to be using it a lot. So you may as well actually spend a lot of time like understanding how to use it, how to navigate it, and all that good stuff. Now, from there, what I'd recommend is once you learn the terminal, maybe you're on Arch, or like, you don't have to. The thing is, I'm not saying you have to use Arch. I'm not saying you have to use Suckless software, but just at least trying it out will have to make you, use a lot of things that you wouldn't have expected, and you just understand stuff. At the start, you're not going to understand everything. For example, when I learned Arch, I didn't understand everything about it, or I didn't even understand what I was doing when I was installing. I didn't understand that, typing in this command, like I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know what ls or this or cp, like I had no idea. But just getting into the process of actually doing those commands, and then eventually like learning bit by bit, you start like, it starts increasing, like your knowledge starts to widen. But again, you don't have to use if at the end you want to use Ubuntu, use it. It really doesn't matter. Or if you don't even want to use Arch, again, I'm just telling you how you can learn as much as possible about Linux. So from there, what I'd recommend is get into scripting. And scripting is interesting. I think I learned scripting before programming. And if you're interested in programming, you want to become a programmer, but you never really felt like you could be, like you're just too dumb, scripting is a great way to get into it. Because essentially what you can think of is scripting is like another layer to programming. So at the very bottom, you have zeros and ones, you have binary. That's machine code. Now, no one can really edit, like no one can really code in zeros and one. Back in the day, they did, because that's the only thing they had to. But there was no real way. And then after they built like assembly languages, it's still very like esoteric, very hard. However, it's a lot more doable than zeros and ones. And after that, they started building programs like C. Like C was the first like big like programming language. And it's still like, it's considered like one of the, it's not hard, but it's very, I've been using the word esoteric a lot, but it's like, there's just a lot to it. There's syntax and there's this and char-star and like, all this stuff to it. And then eventually we started getting programming languages like Python. Now Python is very, like, they'll always recommend Python to use when you're first learning, because Python is very like, it's as simple. It's like, it's as close to English. Like you just say what you want to do in it and it just happens. It's not fully there, but it's very close. It's very close. Compared to C, it's extremely close. And there's just so much stuff you can do with it. It is a great programming language. But scripting, I'd say, is even above that. Scripting is you're utilizing, so programming, you're creating something from the bottom ground. Obviously if you're on Python, you're using modules and all this other stuff, but you're still kind of combining like very basic core principles together to create some program. Scripting is using programs and then linking that together to have some sort of functionality. You're not necessarily creating a new program. It's more just chaining stuff together. It's linking stuff to create some functionality that is very like simple. And again, when you're using scripting, the thing is, the types of Linux and Unix commands you learn, it's not going to be, you're not going to learn everything. Like, for example, you learn ls, you learn cp, you'll learn rm, you'll learn mv, you'll learn these commands. But then you're not going to be using stuff like grep often. Or maybe every now and then you'll use cat. Maybe, like, I doubt you'll use awk though. But when you're scripting, you'll be using these commands. Likely. It's likely. It's not guaranteed, but you'll be more likely to use these commands because these commands, grep, awk, cat, grep, awk, especially, those two are extremely powerful. They're proper like programs. They're proper, they have insane functionality. And that's the kind of stuff, like, I can't explain why, but it's just the kind of stuff that you'll be, especially if you're making some kind of script that is meant to do like a whole bunch of stuff, it's the kind of stuff that you're just going to be using a lot because there's a lot of functionality to it and it can just give you a lot of, it just can help you a lot. Whereas when you're individually doing something on the terminal, sometimes it's a lot easier to just do, like type out brute force what you need to do. Let's say you want to do that. But when you're scripting, it might be a lot easier to use something like awk and then select the columns or whatever. But again, I'm not trying to like teach you exactly like every single program or anything. I'm just trying to give you an overview. But for example, what I'd recommend is creating your own scripts. So I'll give you 4 ideas right now for free on scripting projects that you can make. Just, you know, think about the idea, or maybe you'll have another idea from my idea, but these are ideas that I'd recommend. So the first one is just change your wallpaper. You learn how to change your wallpaper. For example, I've got one. What I do is I open up D menu, LLP, or just, you know, wallpaper, but LLP is just easy for me to open it. Wallpaper, it shows me a list of all my wallpapers. And from here, I can just select, let's say I want to select Misty Mountains, and then it changes my wallpaper like that. You know, so, or like, you know, Italia, boom. So that's one idea. Now I do have a video. I think a video for almost everything here, but if you're really about it, try and figure out how to develop the script before watching my video, you know, just try to, and then from there, just, you know, if you can't figure it out, then look at my video. But what you have to understand, it's all about linking programs together. Like if you know that there's a program like Fair has the functionality, if you look at the manual page, it has the functionality to change wallpapers. And yeah, I'm not going to go into it right now, but it has the ability to do that. Okay. Oh, I know D menu, that can show list. You can already probably start picturing like, okay, maybe if I run this command and after that put it into this variable, and then, you know, you can start piecing together like how you can create a script that will change your wallpaper. Let me take a water break. This is intense. Next idea is display crypto in a terminal. You know, I have this program, BTC, and essentially it shows me the price of Bitcoin in USD and some stats. The price change today, daily change in dollars, 24 high, 24 low, market cap. These are just some stats I'm interested in. Usually I only look at this and that's it. But, you know, if you're interested in crypto, what I used to do is I'd open up my browser and I type in Bitcoin market or, you know, whatever website it was. And then, you know, it takes a couple seconds to load and then this and that. And you have to wait for the browser. This literally just goes to the same website, takes the information, you just wait for it to load and boom, that's it. So, you know, that's what, and I remember when I did that, I didn't even know stuff. I remember I posted an original video about like how to do it, but I did it in like a very bad way. And I remember like I had some problems and some guy commented like how to do it. I'm like, wow, this guy just figured out how to do it, but like even better. And then I remade the video again like the next day. But that's another idea. Next is Bluetooth connect, you know, some kind of script to connect Bluetooth. So if you have a Bluetooth device, let's say you have AirPods, let's say you have like headset or something, then, you know, I have a script BCN, Bluetooth connect, and then it just shows me all the things that I typically connect. I have a keyboard, I have a speaker, and I have AirPods, and then it will just connect those. So another way to figure out instead of using a GUI program, it just saves you time. Like the great thing about these scripts, it's not just like inherently pointless, because if I wanted to do this, I can do the same thing. I already have a program, but what I have to do is I'd have to type in this long name. It opens this up and it's just ugly. Like you can't even change the thing. This is just clean. BCN, it's still like dark mode and it's minimal. You know, I don't need to open up this entire window just to change my, you know, connection. And then the next thing is Pomodoro. You know, maybe you've heard about this Pomodoro technique. Essentially, it's like you study for X amount of time and then you have Y amount of minutes rest. So let's say you have 25 minutes of study, of productivity, of work, and then 5 minutes break. You can just do whatever you want. Or you can have like 45 minutes and then 15 minutes break or something like that. Essentially what I did is I made the script Pomodoro. You type in, okay, do you want 25 minutes, 45 minutes, 50 minutes? Let's say I'm feeling like 50 minutes. Then that will be 50 minutes with 10 minutes break. And then how many times? Let's say I want to go through this, like I want to do this twice. So there's 50-minute break or 50-minute work, 10-minute break, 50-minute, you know. And then let's say I want to do this twice. And then it starts as timer. And then once that's done, if I quit, it'll have this bell. Like you can't hear it right now, but it'll have that bell. Actually, if I turn on my audio. So once I quit, it should have this audio. Oh, it doesn't seem you can hear it, but whatever. And then again, it has the same thing, has the sound, and then after, you have the 10-minute break, and then final bell, and then done. So again, another idea. And these are just ideas. If you want to create your own thing, do it. And then finally, this is the final step that I'm in myself. And that is, I feel like this, I'm going to start focusing on this. This can really increase your Linux like knowledge. Like this can take you from like, you know, a chump like me, like you know some stuff, but you're not that good at anything, to like really like knowing like some stuff well. And kind of getting into like hacker territory. And that is playing war games. And what I'd recommend is Bandit. So war games is essentially like, it's a game that is kind of like, it's like a hacking game. It's made, obviously you're not actually hacking into anything, but it's made to where it's like simulating it. So essentially there's a website called overthewire.org, and I'll leave a link to it. But essentially they have many different games. They recommend playing Bandit as like, I guess like the newbie one. And essentially this one, if you go through it, I've not beat this. This is the first game and I have not beat this. And I figured out why. Like I figured out I'm not really doing this in the best way. But essentially you start at level 0. You know, there's all this information. You can read this if you like. But essentially you start at level 0. And it tells you the password. And essentially the goal of it is you know the users. And you have to log into their server through their like IP and whatever. And you know the user. The user, it's like always like Bandit 0, then Bandit 1, Bandit 2, Bandit 3, Bandit, all the way till 33. But you don't know the password. The password is just some random strings. So what you need to do is essentially from each level, you need to get to the next, like you need to find out the next level's password. So how you can do that, it's always like something different. Like in the first level, I think it's like, you just got to open up the file called Bandit 1, which is like the next level, Bandit 1 password or something like that. And then inside it just has the password. And then that's how you log into the next level. That's how you get to the next level. And then on the level after that, okay, well, now the file's actually hidden. So it might seem hard. You're like, where's the file? But then you figure out it's a hidden file. And then you open up the hidden file. And then again, it's the same password. And then again, it gradually gets harder to where you have to start logging into server, like different servers. And you have to, like, it gets very like into it. I remember like, yeah, it's just going to be like very like complicated very quickly. And, you know, after this, there's so many different war games that I'm pretty sure, like I tried this out a bit as well. It gets very like, after the second level, I had no idea. And I looked up the solution. It was like some crazy thing. So the thing is, my problem is that I'd play, I would get to, let's say, I think the highest I got to was like maybe 20. But, you know, eventually like you just get stuck. Like you just get really stuck. You just don't know. And I figured out, like, essentially when you get stuck, just look it up. Like I did do this a couple times. Like I just look up the solution or partially the solution just so I get a hint on what to do. But I'd recommend, like, if you're really stuck, just start looking at the solutions. There's no harm in it. I think they don't actually recommend it, but that's what I would recommend, you know. Like, when you're on math, you know, obviously, like, you learn, and then there's be some questions that you have no idea how to do. That you have no idea how to solve it. And what do? You ask the teacher, hey, teacher, can you help me? I have no idea how to solve this. And then maybe they give you some hint, or maybe eventually they just show you. And you're like, okay. And maybe it doesn't even get into your head the first time, but after a couple times, you'd actually start like feeling and you just understand how to solve it. It's kind of like that. You just have to see the solution sometimes, and then you start building a grasp. You start building a grasp of like how to solve the similar kind of problems. So that's what I'd recommend. Go through it. Every time you get stuck, look through the solutions. Even if you have to look through every single solution, after that, then try solving it again. Like try solving it with 0 solutions without looking up anything. And maybe you get stuck again and you look up solutions and you keep doing this. And eventually you're probably going to be able to solve the whole thing without needing to look at solutions. Now, obviously it might be like, oh, well, you just memorize everything. But then you go to the next games and you'll probably know like how to solve like quite a bit of levels. You know, again, maybe some levels you have to look up the solution. But still, you keep doing that and you just start building a grasp like, oh, okay, so I can do this in this way. Like you just learn like very like weird stuff, but it's stuff that will make you very in tuned on like the Linux operating system, the Linux file system, all that. So that I would say is my recommendation. If you want to go from 0 to hero, in Linux. This is kind of my story, and still kind of like how I'm going through it. Like I'm kind of at that like last part. Like I've already done everything else. I'm starting to want to widen my knowledge and really get a grasp of like these little tidbit kind of things, getting to the like kind of hacking, like kind of like cybersecurity aspect. But I hope this video has been informative. If it has, please share this video with others. It helps me a lot. If you enjoyed, please like, subscribe, hit the bell notification if you want to be updated with my new videos, and I'll see you guys next time. See ya.